Hi, in this video I'm going to share with you the key to understanding how emotions work for yourself and for your children if you have any, and the best ways to deal with them in order to feel better. You see, we're all emotional beings, but there are many misconceptions around how emotions work. And in fact, the kinds of things that the majority of people do to try and deal with emotions is actually the opposite of what helps. So in this video, we're going to find out what does work. My name is Stefan Gonick. I'm an expert EFT practitioner and founder of the Soulmate Attraction Academy from EFTalive.com and singletosoulmate.me. Now, the first thing to understand is that there are 5 primary emotions in a similar way that there are 3 primary colors. You know, when you mix those 3 colors, you can create any color in the rainbow. Well, same with emotions. There's 5 primary emotions, or you can think of them as categories of emotions, and then there's more complex ones that's sort of a combination of 2 or more of these primary emotions. The 5 primary emotions are mad, sad, glad, afraid, and ashamed. Okay, so like these, these primary emotions you can think of as like categories. So under mad is basically anger. So we have, mildly irritated, annoyed, angry, enraged, and things like that. So it's like a range of variations of that primary emotion. And then under sad, we have sad, hurt, lonely, down, depressed, things like that. And then under glad is, notice these first 3 just rhyme, which makes it easier to try and remember these. So glad is all the positive emotions. So it'd be like joy, happiness, excitement, things like that. Fear, afraid, fear, that would be, anxious, scared, nervous, things like that. And then under ashamed would be, embarrassed, humiliated, and that kind of stuff. Now, the next thing is where the first misconception comes in. And this is a very common one. And that is confusing the emotion that we're having with the expression of the emotion. You see, each of these 5 emotions has its natural expression. So if you think of the anger column, the natural expression is to make loud, angry sounds like yelling, and maybe, physical, active kind of physical things like taking a bat and pounding on a mattress or something like that, right? So there's this very kind of aggressive physical expression for anger. Now, in the sadness column, the natural expression we're all pretty familiar with, that would be crying. So that's the natural expression of that one. For fear, a lot of people don't know it, but shivering is the natural expression of fear. We're going to not worry about the glad or joyful category because, there's lots of natural ways to express that, but it's also not an issue, right? The rest of the emotions are the ones that we, had challenges with. And then shame is a little trickier one, and I'm not going to try and discuss that one now. That was a little bit more subtle. But what do we mean by confusing the emotion with the expression of the emotion? And the best way to talk about this is with a very common example that I unfortunately see lots of times when we're out in public. And that is, you'll see a child who's crying. And you'll see a mother with that child. And what's happening is that she sees her child crying because the child is sad or hurt or something like that. And she thinks that if she can get her child to stop crying, which is the expression of the sadness, then her child will no longer be sad. And then you'll see her do things like start to bounce let's say a little kid, bounce the child on her knee and go, oh, look at the pretty birdie over there. Isn't that pretty? Or, oh, look, there's a clown or, something, to try and kind of distract the child away from crying. But the thing is that the expression of the emotion is how we actually get the emotion out of us, right? It's not the emotion itself. It's the way we release that emotion. So if you interfere with the crying process, what's happening is maybe you'll successfully get the kid to stop crying and maybe even seem to cheer up, but they still will have all the sadness left inside of them, right? What we want to do is encourage the expression of the emotion because that's going to help release all of the, in this case, sadness until the child is done. And now that brings me to actually a really helpful analogy. Here's one way you can think about emotions. When something happens that is upsetting in some way, whether it makes us angry or sad or scared or whatever it is, let's just, for the sake of argument, just assume that we're experiencing one emotion. Typically you'll experience more than one, but just to make this simpler, one emotion. So if something happens and you're feeling say sad, like the example we're using, depending how sad you are, you can think of your sadness as like a tank of water. And if it's a minor event, it'll be a little small tank of water. If it's a medium event, it'll be a medium-sized tank of water. And if it's like a super big upsetting thing, it'll be a really big tank of water. But it'll be a finite amount. So when you express the emotion, you can think of it as like opening the spigot at the bottom of the tank, and the water draining out of the tank is expressing the emotion, and you just keep expressing it until all of the sadness water drains out of the tank, or all the anger water drains out of the tank, or all the fear water drains out of the tank, things like that. Okay, so this is the natural healing process that we're all born with as children, that is true for our whole lives. Okay, now at the end here, I'm going to talk about EFT as another way of doing this that's dramatically faster. But I just want everybody to understand just the basics of how emotions work. Is that you want to keep expressing the emotion until you drain the tank. A lot of people are afraid to go there because when they first start crying, say, it feels endless. Like I feel like if I just open myself up to my crying, I'll never stop. Now, that's not true for actually two reasons. One, like I say, it's a finite amount. It's not an infinite, forever amount of sadness. And two, there's only so long we actually are able to express an emotion. We get emotionally tired and we just can't keep doing it. So if you happen to have a really big tank, like let's say somebody close to you dies, so you're in mourning, you're not going to drain the tank in one time sitting down and crying. You'll have the big tank like this, and you cry for a while, and it'll come down to like that. And then cry on another day and come down like that. And you just keep doing it, and then eventually you will clear it out. Now, in the United States culture, we tend to be very uncomfortable with emotions. So here's another thing, that's another misconception that is the opposite of what we need. So if we go back to the mourning example, what the most common advice we get from friends and loved ones is to keep busy, right? Your spouse died or your parent died or something like that, and they say, well, just keep busy, to distract you from the sadness, right? But that's just keeping it inside, and it just stays inside. And so what you really want to do is do what some cultures do in a case like that, which is you create a little shrine to the person, lots of times in your bedroom or in a special room, and you spend time every day mourning, letting yourself cry. At the very least, feel the sadness and try and express it in some way, sometimes by talking about it, sometimes by journaling, ideally by crying. And if you do that long enough, you will drain the tank until it's empty. And then you won't feel the sadness of the loss anymore. You'll feel all the appreciation and pleasurable memories and things like that. But you'll feel okay again. You'll feel at peace again. So that's the kind of thing we want to do. Is whatever it is. Now that's a major thing, the loss of a loved one. But for smaller, regular things, you can usually get it done in just one sitting of letting yourself do it. Now this is really important with children. You want to encourage them to let their feelings out. You want to do it in a safe way. Crying is easy. You just hold them and you go, yeah, that's good. That's you just sympathize and go, and just sort of lightly stroke it back. You say, yeah, just let it out. Just let it out. Keep going. Crying, that's really good. That's really good to let all your tears out. Just keep going. And they'll recover pretty fast. I'll never forget this scene one time when I had a girlfriend and she had two young children. And they were playing together. And my girlfriend and I were in this other room. And the younger child came in and he was crying because his brother had done something upsetting. And he sort of plopped himself in my girlfriend's lap and he's crying. And he's talking about what happened, but he's crying so hard we can't understand anything he's saying except for the name of his brother. So he's going like, and let's call his brother George. He goes, George. And he did it for a while, and she was kind of going, just making sympathetic sounds and just sort of stroking his back. And he just did it until he just went, okay. And he just, and he was done. And he just went back to play with his brother. And I was like, wow, a textbook perfect example of this principle we're talking about, of just draining this little tank dry by letting it all out. So, that was wonderful. And this brings me to another big misconception around emotions. There's this expression that we've all heard that goes like this: time heals all. And I really wish that was true. The idea behind that is if you let enough time go by, that will heal whatever it was that happened, right? And sadly, that is incredibly not true. It is true that the thing that happened will sort of recede in your consciousness so that you're not directly thinking about it so much anymore. So that part is sort of true. But the impact from what happened, if you don't let out all the painful feelings, can last the rest of your life. I work with lots of clients as an EFT practitioner, and I'll be working with people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, to help them heal stuff that happened to them when they were 5 years old. Right? So if time healed all, you would think a 70-year-old would have no healing left to do from their childhood. But unfortunately, that's not the case at all. So when we hold our feelings inside, they stay in us. By not expressing them, not getting them out, they just stay in us, and they continue to impact us until eventually we do let them out. Of course, and it's never too late, which is a good thing. There's this book title, for a book, I've never read the book, so I'm not recommending the book itself, but I love the title of this book. And it goes like this: Feelings Buried Alive Never Die. Right? Feelings buried alive never die, which is basically this really cool way of saying the thing I just said. Time does not heal all. Whatever you keep inside of you stays there. And they keep impacting you forever. So our natural human healing mechanism is to just let our feelings out long enough until we drain the tank dry, and it's done. Whatever that event was, you've released all the emotions associated with that event, which will also heal the impact from that event. Now, as an EFT practitioner, we have a way of doing this a lot more quickly than just the natural healing mechanism of just continuing to cry it all out, or bam, 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 do enough anger stuff to get all the anger out, whatever it is. Using tapping, it dramatically accelerates that process. But it's still the same process, because in EFT, we encourage people to feel the emotions, right? To tune into what we're feeling and to name them, and then we tap while we're doing that. Now, for instance, if you're tapping on sadness and you start crying while you're tapping, that's even better, right? Because the crying is letting out the sadness, and the tapping is also letting out the sadness. So you have two ways of releasing the sadness at the same time, so it makes it even faster. But tapping, EFT tapping is all about feeling our feelings and releasing them through the tapping process. But either way it's still basically the same process. So this is really important, like I said, for you to understand better how to deal with your emotions, right? Instead of avoiding them, you want to find a good environment to let yourself feel them and get them out, right? Either by yourself or with someone who cares about you, who can be emotionally supportive while you do it. And you can either do it the natural way, or you can do it with tapping. Now with children, we really, really want to encourage them to get their feelings out. Because otherwise, going back to the example where the mother with the best of intentions was, distracting her child from, say, his crying, to try and make the kid feel better and not be sad. Now, we now understand that that's not what's happening. What's happening is they're stopping crying and the sadness is staying inside of them. But worse than that is they're getting the subtle but clear message that it's not okay to cry, right? If a kid's crying, you try and distract him or her from crying, you are conveying, without maybe intending it or realizing it, that it's not okay to cry, which is a big part of the American culture is to avoid our emotions. So I encourage you, if you have children, to encourage them to feel their feelings, all of them, whatever they are, and just to be loving and supportive as they do so, and keep encouraging them to let it out. And you'll be amazed at how fast they get over stuff. It's really cool. And also treat your inner child the same way. These will help you too. So I hope this was helpful. If it was, it would really help me and other people to find this video if you click on the like button. You're very welcome to subscribe to my channel to get other really useful and interesting videos about EFT and also everything emotional and love life and things like that. Also, on my two websites, I have two things that you may be very interested in signing up for. One is on my EFT website. I have a ebook called Change Your Beliefs, Change Your Life, which will teach you how to use EFT to shift negative beliefs, which can our belief system can have a huge impact on how our life goes forward. So changing negative beliefs into positive ones can be hugely helpful. And then after the ebook, every couple of weeks you get a very short newsletter, which is usually just 1 or 2 pages long, with really helpful, practical ways of using EFT to enhance your life. And then on my singletosoulmate.me website, and I have links to both of these in the description of this video, I have a free mini course called The 3 Secrets to Attracting Amazing Love, which talks about the 3 key blocks to finding your soulmate and how to break through with all 3 of them so you can be with the love of your life. All right, see you on the next video.